now a word from our sponsor, Anchor.fm. Here's the deal. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's one of the easiest ways to create a podcast. Let me start. In my first episode ever, I talked about fear. And fear comes from a lot of places, one of them being able to access technology. But Anchor FM is free. It's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. They'll even distribute it for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a bunch more. And guess what? The coolest thing is they even connect you with sponsors if you want at no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So here's the deal. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Again, go to anchor.fm to get started or search in your app library for anchor.fm. Today we're going to talk a little bit about something that I know is a struggle when you're running a growing business, specifically dealing with why your staff or employees may not necessarily be listening or following or executing the way you want to do. Stay tuned. And for this episode of Let's Build This. All right. Whether you're a brand new entrepreneur and you're figuring stuff out on your own, or you've been doing it for a while and you've been hustling and working your butt off like me, this is totally something that I have had to learn. And it's been learned, been working at this for probably since the end of high school. So we're going on 14, 15, 16 years of working at this. I didn't understand what leadership meant back when you're younger. It's this concept, right, where leadership and management and like the person who you're supposed to follow, and like there's a teacher at the front of the room who knows things and they tell you what to do and you're supposed to do what they tell you to do, and there's all of this nebulous thought process, and as a kid you're probably not paying attention to it. If anything, you're being a jerk because you're like, I don't have to listen to you because blah blah blah, whatever your reasoning, expletive, like you're not my mom, you're not my dad, you can't tell me what to do, blah 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 blah. And as a kid, totally makes sense, right? Kids don't understand or have the soft skills or necessarily understand teamwork. They understand there is a hierarchy more often than not, but they don't necessarily understand why or how that hierarchy exists or how it came to be. So we see these people leading us. We've got coaches in athletics. We've got directors or teachers, directors in music. We've got teachers in school. We've got our parents at home. We understand that our parents have a boss and their parents' boss has a boss and their boss, the boss, right? Like we get it. At the school, we've got a teacher and the teacher has maybe a manager or a supervisor, and then they have a principal. And we never want to end up talking to the person who's at the top, because if we talk to the person at the top, probably not a good thing most of the time. At least that's how I was raised. I'm sure many of you have different experiences, but how I was raised was now keep in mind, I went to a private Catholic grade school in a small town of 12,000 people. Back then it was probably shy of 10,000 people, 9,000, 10,000, and it floated. And I always thought it was cool when the population went up on the sign because it said, "My town grew," right? Like, cool. Anyway, tangent. But the point is that up until about second grade, like I was a smart kid, but I was a pain in the rear end. I was a pain in the ass, plain up. And then I had a really good teacher in third grade and I had good teachers prior, right? But in third grade, something clicked with me. And Mrs. Smith was by far, she was soft, she was gentle, she took the time to understand me and come to where I was at. Whereas previously, I felt like I was always fighting, like, hey, I'm working hard. Why? Like I'm doing everything you're asking and I'm not getting to where I need to go and I'm hitting results and I'm doing what you need to do. And there were others who weren't doing that, but I was doing it. And then all of a sudden in third grade, I got a little bit of recognition. I had some soft things and it worked, right? The point is, like, in terms of leadership, what Mrs. Smith helped me to do is help me build a vision for myself. And she helped me understand that I had a lot of gifts and a lot of talents, and I was in a great situation to nurture those things. And I wasn't using these words, right? I'm sure they were words like, Brad, you're really good at stuff. And when you're good at stuff, sometimes you have to show everybody else that it's possible. So at that point in time, in third grade, when those words were said, I understood the premise of modeling good behavior, because modeling good behavior meant you were rewarded. And then not only modeling good behavior, but modeling the fact that the work will get the results you want also meant you would get rewarded. So at that point in time, like now I understood authority and I wanted to follow and I always wanted to hit expectations for Mrs. Smith and for virtually every teacher after that. So I did that. I was top of my class. I was a straight A student. I was a really good student. I always got good grades, always excelled and was like a starter in sports and was typically not necessarily the most talented, but definitely worked the hardest at it, ran the hardest, did what he was told, did the push-ups physically, worked on the ball skills when I was playing soccer or basketball, swam hard. Like I would be the equivalent of like a practice monster or a gym rat or I was reading books. I was doing everything above and beyond. I was a quote unquote overachiever to my friends, and some of them who I still have today still consider me an overachiever, which I guess is a compliment looking back. Um, but you take it personally back then. But this all happened because there was a vision for me, and it was modeled for me, and it was explained to me. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because right now, like, I feel that even though I've had some other lessons along the way, like in high school, I began to actually study leadership. And I studied leadership because I had struggled communicating with my peers because I was always working so hard and I was always like, I'm doing so hard and I'm doing so well. Why can't you just do the same as me? Right? And that's where I began to understand leadership as an aspect and communication as an aspect of we are all different and we can't all achieve at the same rate. We can't all do things at the same rate. And even though I can do it, doesn't mean you're capable of doing it. But in my head, I still believe that if people put in the time and the work, they can do whatever they set their mind to because it is a mental thing more often than not. And there's stories and stories and stories that I can dive into, and at some point we will. But the premise is that not everybody always wants to. And I'm struggling right now with some of this stuff because of the environment we're in. I've actually been talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of peers, a lot of business owners who are dealing with the same thing. And it's a struggle for anybody who has staff. It's a struggle for them personally. It's a struggle for me personally some days. But the motivation of modeling that behavior for everybody who works with you or for you or above you is really, really hard right now. And I'm saying this because part of me in my head is trying to understand how, because I set a plan, and I think I mentioned this in one of the previous episodes. Like I set a plan, I'm going to build, right? There's these things called funnels, and I've been studying this stuff for about 4.5, 5 years, and it's still really hard to communicate it to everybody in the team. And even though we put resources in front of them and tools in front of them, still struggling to grasp these concepts. And it reminds me of the days like as a kid where like, why can't you do this? We have all the tools. You have direction. You have mentors. You have people teaching you. I'm paying for people to teach you. I'm paying for you to use these tools. I'm working to try and get you on the same level as me. Because, gosh, the toughest thing and the worst thing in the world is to build a business and just create a job for yourself. Because you're going to work 100 some odd hours anyway. But at the end of the day, you're trying to bring people on to lighten the load so you can go and relax a little bit and have a vacation. There's all these podcasts of entrepreneurs having vacations and why rest is important and all this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I really want a vacation because I hadn't had one of those in years. If you're an entrepreneur like me, can I get an amen? Amen. But my point is this, is modeling behavior the same way as I once did when people would come into the office, when you'd have direct conversations, when you could look at people face to face, when you could feel the energy in the room, when you could amp people up. Like, energy is contagious face to face. Energy via a digital interface lacks significantly. It's not even like being on stage where you have to break down the fourth wall. No, there's like 8 dimensions of space you have to break down when you're going through the internet. And I'm putting this out there because I really want to figure this out. And I'm racking my brain and I'm really trying to look at it and go, okay, I know everybody else is dealing with this stuff. And so I would be really curious of everybody else who's struggling with the same stuff, if they have any solutions out there, right? Because this workload of what I'm doing is not sustainable, and teaching people how to do it, like learning and communication is always a two-way street. And, sometimes people have to make the choice to learn it on their own, and they have to want to put in the time. And right now, motivation in the world is lacking just because there's a lot of negativity going on. And so I guess the big thing my point of this whole episode is this. One, who's dealing with the same stuff, man? You're not alone. You're not alone. Ladies, you're not alone. Because I know there's a lot of you out there going, dude, these guys, and to be frank, like, dudes, we suck. We suck sometimes. Like, we're bad. Like, whatever. That's a whole nother thing. And at some point when I bring on some of my guests, you'll get the gist, because we'll joke about it and talk about it. And there's ways to manage us. There are. And lead us, leadership, management, 2 different things. But all right. So point 1, you're not alone. Point 2, now's the time to try new stuff to motivate and manage those people. I think the first 2 episodes I talked about fear, right, as like a tool, right? That can be very extremely negative, but in short bursts can be positive as a management style. And it's not recommended, but right, there are people who have built empires on fear. Henry Ford, that whole Ford company was built on fear. The multiple generations of the Ford family and the men who ran the Ford company, the Ford Motor Company, right? It's all built on fear and patriarchy and like macho man and all, like, yeah. I mean, Ford v Ferrari, like that whole thing. If you haven't seen that movie, it gives you a really good insight as to like how business was done back then in the 40s, 50s, 60s, right? Gives you a good idea. But I guess my call out again is try something different. Try something different. And you got to individualize it almost. So now is the time for you as a leader and as a manager to individualize how you manage each of those individuals, because we're probably going to be working remotely for some time now. So begin to figure it out, because otherwise you're just going to prolong the nightmare that is managing numbers of people, or guess what? Managing yourself, for one. Because if you can't manage yourself, or lead yourself, you can't manage others or lead others. So that means making sure your environment is set up for success. And that might mean building in some layers of management, right? Because this takes, like I said, 10 times the energy. So maybe you have to train some people in your team to help build in self-accountability and teach them management. I'm doing that right now with a couple of our people, right? We installed managers, and not managers in the sense, but like lead a team. You're in charge of bringing the energy. I will be here for you. We will have some time together every week, and we're going to talk through the challenges. But I'm actively developing through transformational leadership, teaching management styles, teaching and building systems so that they can lean on the system in terms of like production or process or any of that stuff, right? But try something new right now, because you're going to have to. Because if you don't, I am scared for you and your health. And I'm also scared for your business and your organizations and those people who rely on you to be the consistency, right? Because leadership at the root, there's like a big thing. The main point of leadership is being consistent. And right now, not everything is anything but consistent. So do me a favor. Couple things. Curious about your thoughts. So I'm actively, hopefully by the end of this weekend, you will have a website that you can drop in some comments and some commentary. And also there will begin to be show notes. So check it out. It's going to be bradleyjames.co, bradleyjames.co, I believe. Let me double check that quick. But I'll double down on that, and I'll drop links in wherever I can. Yeah, bradleyjames.co will be the website. And then beyond that, try something new. And I'm going to build some programming. I've got some coursework in development and some other people who are really good at this that I'm going to be bringing on over the next couple months to help walk everybody through it. Because one, again, you're not alone. Two, try something new. But three, leverage the resources. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, okay? If you try and reinvent the wheel, guess what? Probably not going to be as good because you're not a wheel engineer. Those guys make thousands of dollars right now. They're trying a whole bunch of things, trying to build hover cars. Less friction on the wheel is better, right? More efficiency. Anyway, so there it is. Again, 3 things. You're not alone. Try something new and leverage tools. And stay tuned because we're going to dive into this big time over the next few months, on and off. I'm going to have some great guests on to help with this. And I'm going to be putting some resources up on the new website. And we'll probably have a redirect too, so keep in mind for that as well. All right? All right. Friends, it's great talking to you as always. And go hustle. Be here tomorrow. Take care.